education. And another thing that higher education as an industry is facing is keeping students on track and retaining them in their program, in their institution, and getting them to graduate. There's a lot of resources and scholarships that are out there that are keeping students, in their programs and in their institutions, or if not, transferring to the four-year program to get that degree. Naturally, the benefits of a college education, through my research and my personal experiences, you do have higher income, and as our other panelists talked about, lower unemployment rates, and greater job satisfaction. Your opportunities for growth are there. People do recognize your education, but they're not going to recognize it unless if you have some experience behind it. So when students are in their education program, they've got to be getting that training in order for them to be effective in their role. I see that, in my institution where I work in Tri-C, there's a lot of pride about where they're attending school, and when they graduate, there's a lot of pride to come back and be a part of the institution, whether they're hiring students or whether they're coming as a speaker or they're actually even teaching at the institution. So one thing higher education does, it does breed a lot of sense of pride in where they graduated. I did graduate from Bowling Green, and I go back very often, not only to my fraternity, but to my swimming associations, and I'm always going back to give back to a place where I felt it evolved for me as an individual. I learned so much about myself and some of the dreams that I wanted to pursue, and also about the opportunities for my career. So the highest paid graduates today are in engineering, math, and computer science. Those are certainly professions that are in demand. And I hope that when you hear the different panelists today, you'll understand that there are various industries in Ohio that are looking for those individuals in other areas too. Ohio has targeted or designed a Ohio Jobs Target list, and that list includes 7 different industries that are growing at a great rate. Advanced manufacturing is one of them. Financial services is another one, and obviously IT, computer science. So Ohio does have the need and the demand for people to have their 4-year degrees. So I would highly encourage you to pursue that and keep your education continuing all throughout your career. So thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Robin Hedges. I am the Associate Director for Career Education in the Career Center at Case Western Reserve University. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here this morning. I too am an alum of Bowling Green State University, Isaac Izumba. So I wanted to pose a question for you before I take my 8 to 10 minutes. And so, challenge by choice, participate or not. How many of you have pursued some level of post-secondary education? How many of you have completed an associate's degree or higher? Okay. Thank you. That's helpful context for me. In my role in the Career Center, among other things, I spend a pretty significant portion of my time meeting with both undergraduate and graduate students to discuss issues of career exploration and development, internship and job search, and then very nuts and bolts type things, resume development, interview skills, salary negotiation, what have you. And one of the things, you've heard a little bit about the labor market, right? And the market for education. And so I guess one of the things I want to talk about is that I also, of course, I work for an institution of higher education. I'm in the camp that firmly believes that higher education does have a significant value. I admit it has a significant cost. So I have 2 children of my own, one 11 and one 14 months. And I hope higher education is a route for them. there are certainly other alternatives, but I do believe that it is of great benefit to complete a college degree, and what we know certainly, so let me cite my source, what we know certainly, Hamilton Project of the Brookings Institution, so if you're interested, go home, look it up. We know that over a lifetime, those who complete a college education at the bachelor's level or higher almost double their earnings over a lifetime. So it's estimated about $1.2 million is earned over the lifetime of a high school grad. Those earnings are doubled for someone with a bachelor's degree or higher. And I mean, we're talking a significant chunk of change. So the initial cost of higher education is significant. The return on that investment is spread over a lifetime. So I was saying I work with students, and I do. One of the challenges and benefits of working with students is assessing developmental readiness. And so I think that one of the things that's tough in today's society is that we expect our students at younger and younger ages, earlier and earlier, to be able to make decisions about career without a lot of consideration for are they developmentally ready to do so. The labor market demands it, that they know early, and that they are involved in the work world early and often. I think there are three fundamental questions that every college student should be considering. And so whether they're working with someone like me to do that, or whether they're working with someone like you to do that, they really need to be thinking about and then able to articulate, who am I, where am I going, and how do I get there? And certainly if they're enrolled in education, that's a piece of it. One of the things we know from lots and lots of higher education research, none of which I will cite right now, is that students who are engaged in their academic institution, and what I mean by engaged is they're involved and invested, both in their classroom and outside of it. They tend to persist. So if they're engaged on their campus, they are more likely to complete their degree. We also know that if they are engaged and invested, that their measures of intellectual, social, and emotional development are higher. So there's the argument right there, is engagement early, engagement often. So there are lots of ways for students to be engaged, and since most of you have had some sort of education, I feel fairly confident that if I asked, in what ways were you engaged in your education, you could probably share with me some of the things that you did. Some of you worked while you were in school, some of you did research while you were in school, some of you took advantage of the programs and services that were offered by your institution. So maybe it was from something like study groups, or it could be clubs and organizations. Maybe you were the leader of a club or an organization. And those are certainly things that we advocate for students to consider early as part of their college career. Academics is important, and it's very difficult to enter the labor market with a GPA that isn't very good. But those other experiences are sought by employers. So they're asked and they report it. JT alluded to the value of experiential learning. And so that is a way of engagement. And when we talk about experiential learning, at Case Western, we talk about a lot of things. So we talk about education abroad, we're talking about service learning, we're talking about undergraduate research, internships, cooperative education. So the definition that I'll use is that experiential learning is learning by doing. The learning is intentional, and it should be measured in some way. Experiential learning is built into some academic programs, so JT alluded to that as well. So I think of programs like nursing or other health careers. Can't get out of a program like that without having some sort of practical experience. They're not going to let you be a nurse if you've not at least observed, much less practiced. And thank goodness, right? For all of us who might end up at the doctor's or the hospital. It's not built into every academic program, but I would argue that it exists, it's out there. And so conversations that you can be having with, if you're the prospective college student or your child or grandchild, niece, nephew is considering higher education, is in what ways will you engage with your campus? Because we know that that will help you graduate, and we know that that will help you get a job on the other side. So we know that those who engage in experiential learning develop competencies, skill sets. Certainly it allows them to explore careers. So if I'm in a 10-week internship over the summer, I'm going to get a pretty good taste of what a job might look like. I'm also going to learn a lot about myself. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Is it time for me to make a commitment? Is it time for me to make a change? And so I think that there's a lot of value in experiential learning, and especially in internships and co-ops around career exploration. Even more importantly, it's a way to gain practical experience. So what we know is that more than 50% of employers report that they're looking to hire someone with internship or co-op experience. And that's from National Association of Colleges and Employers. There are other organizations doing that research out there. It's becoming an expectation that students will seek out these experiences. If they're not necessarily built into the curriculum, then it's incumbent upon students to work with you, to work with us, to find those experiences. JT said that his internship was unpaid. I didn't do any internships as an undergraduate student myself. I did as a master's student, and some were paid, some were unpaid. But I can tell you from personal experience that I wouldn't have been able to land that first job out that I did without having the experience. And so the expectations of our employment community continue to ratchet up around students coming with experience. It helps them. Very often, those experiences are now paid. So most cooperative education programs around the country, by that they mean paid work experience. Sometimes students are working part-time, going to school part-time in a co-op program. Sometimes they're alternating, sometimes. So that might be summer and semester, stopping out, working full-time, and then coming back. The good part of that is that they're stopping out to do a co-op, and they're being paid for it. Chances are they're not paying a semester of college tuition. So we're not necessarily increasing the tuition burden to do that. We may increase the time to graduation, but not the tuition burden, and that's a difference. Right, so those students will walk away having had 7 months of full-time work experience, or 9 months, or 12 months, depending on the program and what they have arranged with employers. There are certainly unpaid internships as well, and that's something that I think that the higher education community is trying to figure out. How do we make that work, especially for students who can't afford to do an unpaid internship experience? No easy answers to that. I will tell you that right now, one of the things our department is doing is allocating some money to go toward students who are in our undergraduate arts and sciences programs to pay them a small stipend if they are in an unpaid internship. We're looking to roll that out within the next academic year. We'll see what that looks like, and we're going to have to figure out how do we measure outcomes for those students and then report those outcomes. That's really how we'll get more funding to be able to do that, right? We also know that students who walk away with, who have internships and co-ops, their starting salaries tend to be a little bit higher. And so all of those things build on one another to help the student on the other side. So there are a number of ways to manage debt on the front end. So some students will choose to go to the military first or go to a community college first before pursuing a 4-year degree. Other students will choose to do some sort of service, whether that's military, community, on the other side, where they may be able to use something like the GI Bill or loan forgiveness to help pay. And then others are using their experiential learning opportunities to launch themselves into higher paying careers on the back end. All right. So there's short-term payoff, there's long-term payoff. These things can help finance an education directly or indirectly. I think that that's all I have to say right now.
Okay. We have some clipboards for those people that would like to be on the mailing list. If you haven't already filled out your email, please do so if you'd like to be on informational notices from this church, like in forums and other events. Take a brochure if you'd like as well. And okay, we'll open this to questions and answers. Please speak up because we don't have a microphone. And maybe our volunteers on either side could point to someone in the audience. Bob, do you have a suggestion?
Oh, no, I had a question. Is it okay? Hi, thanks. Since employers have become so risk averse in the last 30 years, in other words, want colleges and high schools to train students rather than training graduates on their own the way it was a little bit before that, how come every undergraduate program does not have some practical experience component? Why is it left to a career services? How come provosts, how come curriculum review committees don't insist that every single undergraduate program, especially those that are considered academic, do not have some practical experience built into the program?
Here, here. Okay.
Well, one way to answer your question is to say that most of our programs do. But all of our health professions programs, this is nursing, occupational therapy, physical therapy, we got a pre-med program with jointly with NeoMed, social work, most of our business majors and all of our engineering majors, there is a required internship or co-op experience. Now, the area that's of interest, and which is a large part of our, at Cleveland State, is the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. And now, we have to tread lightly with those students, because many of those students are actually working full-time, and they say, you want to require me to get practical experience? I've got enough practical experience. I want to come here and study and get a degree. And I don't want to have a requirement that I must work when I'm already working. Now, and the other side of that is, if this is a built-in requirement, that means I have to pay tuition to work for free at some other place. So we recently have set up a program where you can get an internship course listed on your transcript, but you don't have to pay tuition for it. And so this will signify that you have had that real-world experience, and we anticipate that this will be used quite a bit. And we are very active in the finding internships for students and that sort of thing. But I must say that at Cleveland State, many students look upon that as an unnecessary burden that hampers them from getting their degree. Increasingly, they realize that it is a bridge to the workforce, like our other two panelists have demonstrated. But it's not always, and sometimes it's viewed as simply exploitation, and some of the labor unions aren't happy that we're putting free workers in the workforce too. So it's a complicated issue.
You know, I had said, if I may, that our students in most programs are not required to do those things. And so I think it really does vary by institution and how the institution sees its mission in preparing students. I think of Case Western as being a very academically oriented institution. And I think that, that it's challenging to say, you have to revise your curriculum to include this sort of thing. Now, what we know is that not over 95% of our graduates in a given year report at least one experiential learning activity over the course of their 4 years. Over 75% report participating in at least 3, and 3 is the most common number of experiential learning opportunities completed with our students. So could it be mandated? It could. Are they doing it on their own? At Case Western Reserve, they are. And I guess I do want to acknowledge that every institution's population looks different. And so we work with a very traditionally aged population at Case. The majority of our undergraduate students are between the ages of 18 and 24, and Case is their first stop. That's not true at Cleveland State. That's not true at Cuyahoga Community College. And so those students need to be accounted for. I'm not sure that it could be a blanket thing. You can't compare a Case Western Reserve student's experience with a Cleveland State student's. So many of those students are working full-time already, and it is a lot to ask them to stop out. And it may impede their ability to actually complete the degree that's supposed to help them get ahead.
Could I just add just 10 seconds on this subject matter? My panelists are absolutely correct in what they're saying. One thing I would add is that for